Welcome to Turning Point. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun Forecasting Software, where we help the office of the CFO leave spreadsheets behind and model anything from cash flow through to complex scenarios with clarity and control. And joining me today is Stephen Sakach of AI CMO, an AI-powered marketing platform designed to help brands build deeper emotional connections with their audience through empathy-driven strategies and purpose-led storytelling. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
I'm glad to be here. This is going to be fun.
So I always love to start with just finding out, when was the first little nugget in your brain that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Oh gosh, yeah. Growing up, I can see it. Probably the big influence on my life was probably my parents and their entrepreneurial story. I think even when I was like 5 years old, my mom had like this daycare in our house, but she had another job, so she hired someone out. So it was kind of like almost like a side hustle daycare for us kids, and I was part of that process. But even I remember during the 80s when the recession hit, both my parents came home on the same day and lost their jobs. And, they were working for someone else, and they had been, doing that for some time. And so they've got 4 kids. What are they going to do? My mom started 3 businesses from the house. My dad started like a house painting business. He was a computer programmer, right? So this is, a humbling moment, I think, for him, but really probably one of my proudest moments of him just as a child growing up, even as an adult now. But so, yeah, my mother, she had these 3 businesses in this house. And so I'm growing up around this, environment where she's taking phone calls all day. And she was in the bed and breakfast business, like in the early days, doing reservations and things like that. And then I remember one day she had this New York Times story on her business, and they're asking her, "Hey, how can people, get a brochure or something and send?" And she gave them the details, and the Times reporter said, "Do you want to charge anything for that?" And she's all, "No." He's all, "Why don't we charge $1?" And so once that thing hit, we had like bags of mail coming into the house, just bags and bags. And I'm a little kid, sorting through, pulling out all these little $1 stacks of ones. And I think we were paying everything in ones for the next several months. So a very entrepreneurial start there, just seeing my parents hustle, I think. How can I not be influenced, I think, by that for sure.
It was interesting because when I started my, kind of my entrepreneurial journey, I guess, it was always in the back of my mind that, and when I started in the economy wasn't that great when I got my first and really only job when I worked for someone else. It was in kind of the mid-late 90s ish. And even in my own mind at that time, I'm like, you know what? They can just, it's 100% on or off. It's just like a light switch. They can let you go and out the door you go. And my thought was always like, I can always make a buck. Like I can always find a way, right? And just having a bit of that, I don't know, mindset. It was kind of that combined with the fact that I didn't like the idea of having a cap. Like you can make this much and that's all you're ever going to make. And that just, it drove me nuts because I felt like, yeah, what if I work harder? Can I do more? And I think there's every generation seems to have this little burst where even right now, we're in a bit of that right now where jobs aren't necessarily as secure as they used to be. And being an entrepreneur is incredibly difficult and challenging, but there's also, I don't know, there's somehow more security to it than I think some people think.
I think there's so much more opportunity now too, actually. Like when we were growing up, to earn a buck, what would we do? We'd probably have to ask mom, hey, what kind of odd jobs can we do, as a little kid? And we'd come up with all kinds of hustles and things. But now you've got the whole internet angle. Like if I was in high school or something, there's no way I wouldn't have had like 2 or 3, businesses or attempts at businesses, with the internet going at the time. So, I think it's just so inviting anyway for me, that it doesn't scare me. Sure.
It's the opportunity is endless. The competition is also endless, but that's part of the fun though, right? Like it's there because most of these even little side hustles, they just don't last that long. And a big part of it is just having the staying power, learning through the the bumps and bruises to get to the point where it actually works, right?
Yeah, I think so. And like, I guess essentially the business that I'm in now, it did start out as kind of a side hustle almost in the, like you said, the 90s, right when the internet came along. I'm working at my day job, but I'd go home at night with my laptop and, be tooling around on the internet. And I remember when pay-per-click marketing came along, and this was like before Google search, with the ads, there was this company like goto.com. And I saw that and I'm all, this is going to be the future of search and how they monetize it. And so within like a few weeks just after they launched, I was on there playing around with it, which was kind of a scary thing because you're putting your credit card out there and anyone could click on it and everything. But it was like I spent like $1 and sold like a Nikon camera or something, and made like I don't know, $20 or something like that. And I'm all,
Yeah.
oh, okay, let's see what we can do. And so do my day job, come home, sitting on bed with the laptop, and just started diving into digital marketing, which you know wasn't even kind of a career path a few years before that. When I came out of college, we had
Yeah.
we had no concept of that being a thing.
So were you in college, were you like focused on marketing, or what were you kind of taking
I
there?
was actually I was in journalism, but not on the ad side, on the investigative side, doing that kind of stuff. And but there was marketing related stuff with it. Went to the University of Missouri, and they had this digital version of the newspaper. I remember, it was like a disc or something. You had to hand it out,
Oh
but we
man.
got back like analytics from it. Like, oh, people looked at this or clicked on this. Like, this is early stage pre-internet analytics
Yeah.
stuff, but it would kind of inform you a lot about your design and your storytelling and things like that in a very crude rudimentary way back then. So
Yeah.
that would probably be the closest on the really on the marketing side of like my career path.
I got to do a little sidetrack here. I'm curious, how did you pull out analytics from like a disc like that? I'm just really curious how you actually got that data.
They do like a digital version of just a newspaper. And so you'd put it on, your computer, and then as you're kind of clicking on stories or something to read more, it would tell you basically what someone clicked on. It was nothing like if anyone's in GA4 right now, Google Analytics 4 right now, it tells you all kinds of crazy ass stuff, this psychographics, even demographics, everything of the people coming there. It's this insane tool now, but that was this early, just what did they click on, kind of thing.
So it was still like network, like you would, I'm just trying to
We
wrap
had
my
to
head
get
around that
back
a
the
little bit.
data
Yeah.
from it and bring
Yeah.
it back in. Yeah, it was as
Okay.
crude as you can imagine, with one of those floppy disks, right? And
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because like I remember those days. So it's crude now, but at the time it was
it was like, yeah, it was cutting
cutting edge. It's you're trying to solve this problem. I remember, like the how amazing for a very brief time CD-ROMs were, like interactive CDs and stuff. Like it's just it's a little uh, moment in time where it did something interesting with that.
Yeah, and
Um, yeah.
my household, we always had like a computer in the household, even as early 80s, and these were dinner table conversations. We're talking about computer stuff, and we had like the TRS-80 that you could get from Radio Shack, this early model, where you could program on BASIC, and the video games that we played on there were just insanely nothing, just slightly beyond Pong, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember our first computer we had at home was a Commodore VIC-20, which wasn't even the fancy one. The Commodore 64 was the fancy one.
Yeah,
Pretty sure the 20 was for 20K or something. It was pretty amazing.
probably.
And, cartridges with just like the games that were so like, you just couldn't even imagine them now. Right. But I remember being more kind of intrigued with, they must have had just a book, and you would do some little bit of programming. It would make your name go on the screen and all that kind of stuff, and scroll through. And I found that really pretty fascinating. And I never was like, I'm not a developer by trade, but I've done kind of enough of it to understand a little bit and be sort of dangerous, right? But it was quite fascinating. And for me, it's like, how do you get that to something that's visual and that moves and all of that? It was just really intriguing, right? And,
I remember being a little bit dangerous when I don't know how old I was. This was, 11 or something like that. and um, we had like, the internet acoustic kind of thing. This is even pre-way, and you found some numbers that you could call and just kind of interface with. And I ended up running up like a $300 phone bill, but
Oh no.
didn't have like the skills in like war games or something to handle that. But it was just, calling these numbers and everything. Really rude, crude interfaces that you could interact with. My dad at his company had this game. This is in the 70s where we could dial in and it was Star Trek, and it'd just print out the coordinates on a sheet and then you'd send it back a command. And so that was your screen. There was no screen. It was a printer, just, the dot matrix,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I've always had that kind of computer stuff around me growing up. So it makes sense, I guess, that I'm interested in that.
So, you're, kind of, you see this opportunity, you start doing some marketing stuff, you got a day job. At what point do you go, this is interesting, I think I'm going to take the leap? Because that's usually like a pretty big decision at some point for an entrepreneur. Usually, sometimes it's an easy decision, but it's fundamentally a big one.
Yeah, I remember there was like a point where I made more in a month in my night job than I did all year at the day job, kind of thing, where
Right.
it was like, okay, at some point it just doesn't make sense to continue on. So, but again, that was like just coming home, working on the laptop in bed at night and just, pounding day after day until I just started dialing it in and kind of teaching myself things back then. So it was fun for sure.
So at that point, what were you like? How were you monetizing this? Like, were you selling your own goods or helping other people sell?
This was selling other people's goods, basically, that kind of thing. And then, eventually, we kind of built our own sites off of that as this thing kind of expanded. And we did that for quite a while until around the recession, the 2007 recession. So I guess these are storylines in my work career. When my neighbor came to me and he was like, "Hey, I know you're really good at like internet marketing. Can you help me with my business? It's like going in the tank." And so took a look, and I'm all, let me run some ads. Give me like 3 months or something, see what we can do. He said, "Yeah, let's do it." Um, it was just like the middle of his off season. It was one of the worst sites you've ever seen. And we managed to get one or two sales, and I was all, wow, I'm surprised we got those sales. I don't know how those people were able to manage that. So I said, let's just turn everything off, rebuild your site and turn it back on. And so 2 or 3 months later, 2 months later, I think we turned it back on. Sales just went through the roof, and saw his business just, and the people at the business, suddenly flourishing, and kind of, he ended up selling that for like $10 million later, but it was about to go under during the recession. And and that kind of had a change in my thought, is that I could be more in service to people. And that was more enjoying versus doing our own stuff. And so started taking on clients during that recession, and had a couple of people come to us, "Hey, can you help us?" And did kind of the same thing. And so we saw a lot of, that was the satisfying part of the work that was kind of missing when I was doing, sort of my own stuff before. Was just being able to help people. So that's basically how we got into like the agency work that we do now. Was we just flipped it, we were working from a garage office and started building it from there.
I remember that time. So like, I guess not like it's yesterday anymore, but, I had a creative agency at that time. We weren't doing marketing. We were doing a lot of e-learning materials and museum interactives, touchscreen kiosks, a lot of video work, just very digital, all client work, very much like very heavy on government contracts. And then when that recession hit, it's like when the government shut down, they shut down for years, right? And so it was a real challenge for us to switch gears and go pick up corporate customers, which they came back faster. They shut down sooner, but they came back faster. what's interesting is at that time, I wish I would have known you, because our perception was like, we had a website, some people might find us, but we never got, like, we thought, any reasonable clients off of there, which is quite different from today. We never even considered, I don't even know if we knew search existed, but we never even would have considered it. And we hunkered down in the way we always did and networked the heck out of everything. And that actually got us, we were looking for enterprise clients, and
that's not going to hurt you.
Us, never hurts. Even today, never hurts. And especially when again, you're looking for more of like enterprise clients, they don't click generally on an ad. But it was also like, geez, you get like almost no exposure, and it just feels like it's changed so much since then. But we were on the internet, we were doing all this stuff, but it still seems like it's just had such an enormous change. So what were the, as you started to get people through that time, the ends of the 2000s kind of thing, and obviously like pre-COVID and everything, did it start to get into a bit of a rhythm, or how did that sort of transition for you?
Yeah, that's interesting. So in the early days of search were like the Wild West days, like the early 2000s. It was kind of like just a maddening side of job where you'd be constantly in these live auctions, right? And you saw exactly what everyone else was bidding. And if you weren't staying on top of it, someone just bid 1 cent more. You'd lose a huge chunk of business, and you'd see it. And so, during the holidays, it was like you didn't sleep for sure. You were just pounding on all kinds of things and bidding all the time. And then eventually, software started to come along. People tried to figure out, how can we stop this madness? And then I think what really helped everyone was when they stopped showing the bids, and you just didn't know that, and it was like sweet release from from the torture chamber you were in for a few years there. So yeah, I think search kind of evolved along with that, and then we started evolving with it, and really, we're starting to see all these tools out there and doing things that are kind of cutting edge still, and you always have to stay on the leading edge in digital marketing. Like that's just a constant. So you're always looking for that next thing. So continually to do that kind of work, I think sort of helped us master what we were doing. And then, like I said, starting a business during the middle of a recession, a new agency business during the recession, probably not the greatest idea. I don't even know that I'd recommend my business now, or when times are going well, but doing it in the recession was probably some more madness into that mix. But yeah.
Very challenging time, like just, and I feel a little bit of an echo of that now, where small business did not want to spend a dime. Larger businesses, budgets shut down, but after a few months, they started to go, well, we still got to run business, and they started to open up again, and but just a lot tighter. Everything was tighter, and everything was slower.
It was tight and slow, and so at that point, in our business journey, there was just a few of us, like a handful of us. And then, you fast forward to, say, the pandemic time, and we've got, 30, 40 people now, bigger staff, a lot more sophistication. And what was really interesting during that time was the ones that trusted us, that we had that really good connection with. We were able to navigate through the pandemic really well, and they came out the other side of that really well, because they were able to take gambles that, like you're talking about, the money was tight and things, but they were like, we're telling them, hey, these are some of the best signals we've seen for you in a while. I know it's not looking good. We had a lot of financial clients, right? So the markets crashed, but the ones that believed in us, they came out of the other end of that. I mean, with billions and billions and billions more dollars as soon as the market returned, just because of the trust I think they had in us during that time. But yeah, you're right. Like when times get tough, sometimes that marketing budget, it's one of the first things sometimes that that end up
Yes.
getting tightened when sometimes
Yeah.
maybe that's not the best choice.
Yeah, it generally is. It's the first one to get cut, and it's kind of you know, you can see that it compounds the agony, right? Because
Mhm.
there's fewer customers, and now they don't know anything about you, and it kind of makes it worse and worse. And it was like I remember that time, and I remember like for us, we we were growing before all of that hit. So we had we expanded our team. We didn't have a huge team, but it was quite a few mouths to feed, and of course then we had got a much larger office, and built out an editing suite, and the like all of these expenses that were all made perfect sense, and all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, we have this huge office that we were going to expand into, and we are not expanding anymore. Now we just have like room for a couple of ping pong tables, and like it was a little bit out of control, and um, a lot of hard lessons learned during that time, and I think it's those lessons learned then were a little bit of what's helped us get through COVID and through even what's happening now. It's like you can get down to some of the fundamentals and run lean and make sure you can survive.
Yeah, when your back's against the wall, that's when you get creative sometimes, right? You're up against it and you're kind of forced into, trying things you maybe haven't done before, or, like you said, maybe reducing some expenses. COVID for a lot of people, that was, switching out to this whole remote process. For us, we had been we had always been in the office, but because we have people all over the world with our company, we had this really good infrastructure already for remote working and process and all that. So that didn't that didn't impact us other than paying rent on a building we couldn't go to for
Yeah.
a good amount of time. But
Yeah, we were fortunate that we were all remote. Everyone was all over the place already, so it was just like another day for us. But it was fortunately we had set up the business that way because I didn't want because I had learned that I was like I don't want the giant office. I don't want and we I wanted to have people from the people that best fit what we needed, not the location sort of thing. And there's just a philosophy that we had, which just ended up just helping us when COVID hit, because a lot of businesses had to transform really quick.
yeah, what I miss, because we're now hybrid, so we kind of go back, but not always, and we have like all in days, so we're together.
Mm-hmm.
What we can't replicate is just the hearing over someone's shoulder when they're talking about something. We did a lot
Yeah.
of learning that way. I just realized, when that was gone, we can't replicate, those silly conversations about, what you watched last night or something that,
Yeah.
just the random stuff that helps bring you together as a team. We've tried things, virtual cocktail hours and stuff like that. And we have what we call like a storytelling, 15-minute coffee break where you just come in and it's not about work. It's just trying to replicate a lot of that. But it's certainly for us, we haven't quite found, that sweet spot of where we liked,
Mm-hmm.
as a very connected group, working remotely and trying to get that FaceTime, which is it's very hard to replicate.
Yeah. Well, it's essentially it's impossible. Like for us, it's you look at it and say like the benefits outweigh the negatives. We do our best to try and um, reduce the negatives and try and compensate for that. Um, and part of it is also just like we're way more conscious as we expand the team, and that of finding people that are just comfortable in this in a this type of atmosphere, because not everybody is, right. And if you find the right fit, culture wise and everything, it can work. But I do miss that,
Yeah.
walking around the office, looking over people's shoulders, and then, hey, having a little foosball or dart tournament, or all that. We just don't have that anymore. It's all changed.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's just hard to replicate. I think one of the things that kind of helps companies is if you kind of have like a higher purpose to what you're doing, you're going to attract people that are energized by that higher purpose.
Mhm.
And assuming you also, it's a good purpose and not,
Yeah.
when I say higher purpose, I'm talking about a good purpose, not like, the sole pursuit of profit or something as your
Yeah.
purpose statement. Um,
Yeah.
no, it's more of understanding how you impact and how you put good in the world. I think that when you bring together people that are energized and focused on like that, whatever your mission is out there, whatever your purpose is,
Mhm.
that really does help that cohesion. I think people are engaged much more. Like right now, worldwide, only 21% of the workforce is engaged, which is insane. I mean, that's
Mhm.
4 out of 5 people going to work disengaged is you're spending day after day there, hour after hour there, and you hate it. Right,
Yeah.
you're opening up the vein to the corporate machinery or whatever and just letting it suck your soul right out of you day after
Mhm.
day. And I know a lot of people feel that, but so much of that is related to that lack of purpose and meaning in what you're doing. And
Mhm.
so I think remote working and things like that where you don't have kind of that natural connection, if you can connect around something like that a lot more, I think that definitely kind of helps bring that your teams together, and bring everyone together just because they're passionate about it, so they're passionate about the work they do.
Yeah. And like I've been on my own for 25 years or something like that. Um and when from an entrepreneur perspective or as the founder, it's like it's easier to just, I think, to buy into the vision all the time and just want to drive forward. It's like we're all somehow innately just drive. But I think right now it's also um, really hard on entrepreneurs because it's the weight of the world is on us all now. Where there were times, like I know before that, 2005, six, probably early seven, it was like, I'll be honest with you, it just felt like, well, it was just another day. It's fun time. Like, where are we going next? Where are we traveling now? Where it just felt like everything was rolling. It was this one little window where it was like just had stuff rolling in the door. And it feels like since like about 2008, it's been like, no, there's precious little windows like that. It is just a slog, right? Um, I really feel for entrepreneurs, especially since the COVID, because it just feels like one thing after another. There hasn't been a relief. Some industries have been okay, but it just hasn't been a relief, and it's just been a lot of stress and a lot of businesses struggling and failing over the last few years.
Yeah, what's interesting, for some reason we've kind of talked about this. You've got like that recession in the 80s, you got that recession in 2007, you got the COVID, these huge events. And I think people I know so many people who just said, I'm not happy with what I'm doing during those events, so I might as well
Yeah.
do something, or they were shown the door, right? And so,
Mhm.
but there was this kind of self check about what your purpose in life is or what your passion is on each of those events. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to get people out of that comfort zone that you're in. Um, and that feels like a grind though, because maybe there's
Yeah.
something in it you're not totally passionate about, or you just don't see the small perspective shift you need on how your job, plays a role into a bigger picture, a bigger system. Because
Mhm.
sometimes that's all you need too, is just that perspective shift of how am I helping people? How am I really helping people out in the world? And when you find that, even the most mundane job, there's this Simon Sinek story of this guy who's working with luggage at the airport, right, and making sure it gets to its destination, and he's got to go in during Christmas, and his family's upset about it. And he says, "Well, I have to help make sure that the grandpas and grandmas can travel during the holiday to get to see their children. And so it's very important that I'm there." But
Mhm.
just that little perspective shift of that bigger, higher purpose is really kind of how you you can be a little more satisfied, even if it is feeling a bit of a grind. You understand you're playing a powerful role no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think like you're probably like me. Like I'm basically unemployable by now. Like I've built something, like, you know, and like I'm it's just to be able to feel like I'm like you're kind of it's on your shoulders. You're carrying a lot of weight, but you're building something, and you're building. You know, you have this vision, and you feel like you're changing the world. And I don't know if I could get that from being an employee anymore. But I have to engage employees that to feel like that they're part of that, right?
You know what we've done, and this is something very new, like the past year or 2 years, I don't know exactly when it started. We've shifted to a self-managed sort of structure to where instead of being like stuck in that role that you got the job, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and right, and there's a cap and there's a ceiling and stuff like that to that. Um, we've kind of turned our what we call our pods is these teams, um, to allow them to treat it like a small business. Like, hey,
Hmm.
you've got to be in charge of your expenses, and you're going to be doing the hiring for your team. You're going to be in charge of your P&L and all this stuff. And what's happened is I've seen people in that process suddenly just kind of shining like I've never seen before, where they're taking over leadership, um, and you don't always have to be the leader. You can sometimes be a follower, but it's suddenly become this freedom thing where, as long as there's like accountability attached to that, it's allowed people to be more empowered than before. So before, like most business, like 99% of the business, we all got that hierarchical structure, right? Um, that I think is, like you mentioned, it's kind of just putting this cap on people sometimes. And even in
Hmm.
big companies, you probably have to be almost a sociopath sometimes to rise through some of that hierarchy and, join a few other sociopaths up there. But
Exactly.
there's, yeah, there's just kind of the structure of how we do things, I think, needs kind of a radical review because,
Yeah.
um, like you said, it's just like there's a reason like you couldn't really take that job because you'd feel just that almost claustrophobic or boxed in or you're
Yeah.
contained. But if there was a position where it's like, hey, no, you're the leader of this and we want you to build this as your own, suddenly you can feel kind of that freedom and that room to breathe in there. And I think that's
Hmm.
no different for a lot of people out there. We just have this structure that I think, um, you know we've been leaning on for decades and decades and decades, but now we're starting to see some of these higher consciousness companies rethink how they're structuring, their organization, just to
Yeah.
answer that exact issue.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, to me, um, it's kind of like going fully remote. It's like, yeah, man, there's a lot of good, and there's going to be some hard lessons along the way to make sure that you can actually transition to something like that or make it work, because all of these things have, it's like the unknown unknowns, right? It's like, you don't know what you don't know until you're in it. Um, but I get with the pursuit of, um, this outcome of, like, yeah, giving people more freedom and more control over their time and more responsibility, which a lot of people just thrive on that. The end goal makes so much sense, and you can see a lot of the momentum there. Um, what are some of the things that, like, in that you're seeing early on that might be like, okay, here's some things you got to watch for that you've seen, with that kind of structure?
So it's interesting, because you're giving them new responsibilities, and so some of them never hired before, some of them have never fired before, and
Hmm.
so you're kind of coaching with them, kind of co-working on those things, till they kind of build those skills. But like the hiring side, it's great because you're basically your teammates are hiring you, so they're going in there, yeah, check off, make sure they got the talent and the skills. They obviously don't want someone without the talents or skills because you're going to be a drag on their team. But they're
Yeah.
also spending time. Do I like this person? Is this
Hmm.
someone I think I can get along with? Are they going to fit well with our culture? Um, and so you're going to be working shoulder to shoulder with them. So that's kind of been an interesting process, but also that letting someone go process. or sharing them with the world is a more positive way to to approach that.
Yeah.
If it's just not working, like, hey, this person isn't working in our team, and so now you've got that peer pressure of being part of this team and the team now being responsible and picking up your load. It's a weird, interesting dynamic. A lot of that goes on there. We already had a culture that was very intentionally focused around like gratitude and thanking each other. We've got like peer-to-peer giving in our the way we run things, so that anytime someone does you a solid or whatever, usually someone's sending them something and they're getting like a public shout out kind of thing, or the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the week. There's a lot of like positivity there, so that resentment doesn't kind of build within our teams. You're getting that
Mm-hmm.
saying that thing where teammates see you, and it's much better than me before, being the person like, hey, I've got to make sure I see 40 people or something in our agency and make sure they're getting complimented for the work they can do. That's really hard. Or even the managers. But now you've got all the peers doing it. So now you got 40 people carrying that torch instead of one or two or three. And
Yeah.
so it really does help, I think, make this process of the self-management and the teamwork kind of work better, is if you've got systems like that in place. Um,
Yeah.
we very early on, prior, like 5 years before we started that process, I kind of outlined this kind of internal philosophy that I love to share, that we call BLISS, which stands for Build Love Into Scalable Systems. And so when you're in a business, when you start to scale, you start to systemize stuff, right? And early on, we were kind of worried about, are we going to lose our culture as we
Mm-hmm.
systemize this? And it's like, how can we prevent that? So we said, no, let's just kind of build love and empathy into all of our systems. And so that's how you get like a peer-to-peer giving, or gifts that we send to our clients, things like that. It's just kind of like, what's the loving thing we can do? What's the empathetic thing we can do with this system that we maybe haven't done before? You keep asking that over and over and over. Keep layering that into what you're doing. And little by little, suddenly you have this very connecting culture that everyone loves.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't happen overnight, but it happened little by everyone, because we just keep thinking about that bliss philosophy that we have.
So how does that, like, because I know I've looked at your, before we hopped in the show, I was looking at your website and all of that. And I know you have these, like, it has more of an empathetic angle to how you actually, um, execute on marketing plans. And I'm curious how um, how you sort of resolve that, and how how you execute on that and get results back for your clients.
Yeah. So start with the a data point here, that if you can build an emotional connection with the customer, you're going to have 306% higher lifetime value than a satisfied customer. That's over a satisfied customer. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
take it to that next level of where there's this emotional connection with them, you're going to benefit greatly. And this is how communities around your business start. This is how you get to people who advocate for you, who refer business to you, where your customers are your best marketers. This is kind of the holy grail in marketing, really.
Yeah.
Um, but it takes a bit to get there. And so what we try and do is first focus on your purpose, your higher purpose, right? What is it you really do? So we've kind of talked about that a little bit. So making sure that you understand a higher purpose around your business, because maybe you don't. So we kind of run you through a process there. We go through customer journey, but it's not kind of maybe your traditional customer journey. We're really looking at emotions throughout this process. There's, when you're advertising, there's 31 emotions you can deal with, these emotion clusters for as you're advertising. When someone's experiencing your product, there's 17 consumption emotions that they experience. You want to be on the positive ones. If you're on the negative ones, that's when you're getting the bad reviews, and that's when you're getting the the all the low retention, the high churn. Um,
Mhm.
but when you're on that positive side, like when you can surprise and delight someone, right? They weren't expecting that little extra something you did for them. now that they're experiencing your product or service. That's suddenly creating that emotional connection. So we kind of walk through this process of understanding all, it's very empathetic, right? Understanding all these emotions to this whole process and understanding where you might fall short for that. But really, it starts with that purpose, trying to figure out the higher purpose. And so we've kind of put this all into like a software platform. Like you said, AI CMO, the AI Chief Marketing Officer at aicmo.io. But it takes you through that process. And it's really kind of interesting because we've tested it on hundreds of different businesses, and it's very creative. The AI is when it comes to once you get down your higher purpose, how you differentiate from other companies, some of your values, those kind of things. It comes up with some very creative ideas on your campaigns. And then it takes all those campaigns and then creates assets and things like that for you around those guide rails. So if you don't have those guide rails though, it's just, you can have these very dry marketing campaigns. Like if all you know is you're marketing to someone who's, head of HR, maybe they are 42 years old on average. There's not much story there. But if you know that this person enjoys helping people, connect with other people, and you get into the deeper whys behind what they do, then now suddenly you can start to speak to them advertising wise in a way that's much more connecting. So there's a lot that's complex with some of this, but we've really just tried to simplify that method. And again, this is what we do at our marketing agency, but with our philosophy, build love into scalable systems, we're like, how can we scale this in a way that anyone else could come in and do it? So that's when we, spent 2 years developing the AI platform to kind of walk people through that whole process. Because there's a lot that goes in there, and you don't need to know about, all the different emotions and and things like that. If you're just a small business owner, it's like too much. So it's like, oh, can you take me through this like an expert? And really, ideally, what we're doing is we're not prompting AI. AI is prompting us to be better humans, really, right? Being more empathetic, putting more good into the world, cutting down on the noise and garbage advertising, and actually putting advertising out there that has meaning. You've seen great campaigns sometimes that just really resonate when you can hit that tone. So it's hopefully kind of has a ripple effect of putting good into the world is kind of the bigger picture.
Yeah, I'm gonna dig a little bit into that myself, because I find it really, really interesting. I know, like, we've just been through, like, we've been through a pivot to move up market over the last couple of years, and we had to rethink so much. We had to go through some really pretty intense or exhaustive positioning exercises to figure out, how we position in the market and all that kind of stuff. And it was incredibly valuable. It feels like this is
excruciating, like incredibly valuable, but like, I don't know how many weeks or have you spent on, I mean, it was probably quite a while, right?
Yeah, we had quite a number of pretty not like we put a cap on. We wanted to be like, you got to stop before it starts to drag. So we're going to do like some pretty high energy sessions once a week for a number of weeks. And then it got the foundation, and then it's just this touch points of revisiting it. But what I think, I think what you're talking about, especially sort of that emotional connection with your clients, it's weaved through, but not. Now that you're talking about it, I'm like, it's not as much as it needs to be, not even close. Like, I think that's maybe what we take as that next step, is that we've got this positioning, and we've got the beginning points, and there's things that we sort of feel like we maybe intuitively know, but actually recognizing them and actually moving it into a marketing campaign or anything like that, we've stopped definitely short of that. And I can see
it's a huge problem. I mean, that's a huge problem. You're not alone in that difficulty, because you can scatter a whole bunch of different ideas, and suddenly you're farther away from, that one core message or that one core higher purpose that you had, and you're not using the guide rails that you kind of had set in place for your branding in there. And now that just starts to come out in all different places, your emails, your blog, your website, your ads, where it's all just, just a little bit different and not
Hmm.
all super refined. And so if you really want it to resonate, you kind of have to bring these all in alignment, in a way. And so, yeah, like you said, once we get some guide rails in place, it's like, okay, we're using that now, and making sure we stay within those lanes, because it's much more powerful, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about for years, we're always kind of revisiting and going like, we got to go back to building we would call a toolkit, right? Like we got to have this toolkit that ties it all together. It's not to block it down and make it like, but it's some way to sort of tie this together. And we've always had really pushed having a positive approach, not fear factor sort of stuff, like a very positive, I don't even know if that's the best one, but that's just our philosophy, right? More than anything.
Yeah, I think you want to, I don't know. Yeah, you can do fear and things like that, right? That will work. But you can also do love, in your campaigns, and that's
Hmm.
super connecting. I mean, it's just something that people feel good about your company working with. That's how you get to that
Yeah.
emotional connection, is just they feel good about working with you. The tricky part a lot of times isn't so much the messaging that we can help we can help bring all this together and put it in messaging. It's that, yeah, we're talking the talk. Are you walking the talk? Is this the actual experience that people are having when they interact with your business?
Hmm.
And that takes a lot more time, I think. That's where, again, if you go back to something like BLISS, where you're just like, okay, let's just build love into little parts of our business, and keep building that up. That's where you get to that real authentic inside and out company, that your messaging and your people are all aligned.
Hmm.
And that's huge. It's difficult to get to, but it's something that more and more companies are kind of figuring out. And you know, young people are coming into the workforce today, and they're wanting some more meaning and more heart into what they're doing when they're, yeah, I don't know if you know this or not, but they're willing to sacrifice like salary or something for something that actually resonates with them. And
Yeah.
so if it's kind of business as usual right now, 5-10 years from now, I think you're going to be behind the times. And I guess all that means is, like, it's a shame that kindness is like a differentiator in a lot of business. But
Yeah.
really, if you can find that kindness in your business, I think that it can be a differentiator, and all bringing all these parts together, right? Your marketing and your walking the talk. So
Hmm.
but it's not easy to build overnight.
No, no, and but it's I think it's the way that you can differentiate yourself in the
Yeah.
market, and it's something like we've done a fairly big pivot, and we've pivoted like everything, and even how we approach our customers but we're trying to stand out in the market by doing things the right way, because even as our business for the last number of years, I feel like even with some of our vendors and service providers have kind of taken a bath to our knees a few times, and I'm like, that's how you want to do business? Like it really
Yeah.
is. It's
It's this, it's, I could go on like a consciousness rant, but it really is a movement from regular business to conscious capitalist business, to where instead of just that single stakeholder, investor profit focus on everything, now you're thinking
yeah,
about employees, customers, community, and partners, vendors, right? It's like vendors that vibe with you on a higher
yeah,
level.
yeah.
So all those things, when it comes together, that's how you get that sort of feel good environment, versus, like you said, something just didn't, it's just like a disconnect there. It's like, you
Yeah.
really you're going to do that? And so now you've got this disconnect in your business, and that's not good for them, right? This is that they're
Hmm.
doing that. That's not emotionally connecting. That's the opposite. And
Yeah.
what you find out is, you're going to see more and more of these conscious capitalist type businesses coming online. It's just the way consciousness is growing right now.
Hmm.
And the younger people going through the business are pushing that, because of the gravity of all of us before them kind of raising the bar on kindness and
Hmm.
consciousness, and they're getting to that place much faster. um, but all this is in the business world, all this means is that love is the gravity, and you just don't know it. You really don't know it. And you know every week I'm talking to businesses, and I get to ask them what role love plays in their business. and I get great answers from a lot of people, and I get people thinking about this for the first time that they've never thought about before. But step back from everything, it is this huge gravitational force, whether we know it or not, in how we run businesses.
Well, and I think like right now, you can stand out by that sort of this like you said, radical love for your customer, or this radical support. Or to me, honestly, it's just like, guys, we're just do things the right way. Do like go the extra mile, but do it not superficial. But we've seen how these other companies treat their customers and have treated us as customers. And I don't care if it doesn't make us money or not. We're not doing it that way. We're going to do it the right way. And I think it's what happens is it's like you actually stand out and you're different from these other vendors, and people appreciate that. And I'm starting to see the odd place where I've been surprised that, on one of my other podcasts, we actually talked about it quite extensively, where, I had one of our, this is personal, it was my car. Something went wrong with it just on a simple oil change. But I got to tell you, the way that the company responded, because my first instinct was, oh man, this is just brutal. Like I'm going to have to fight with them and everything. And it was the opposite. I couldn't believe how far they went, no stone unturned, to make sure that this was done done right. And just amazing.
Yeah,
right?
And so what this did to you as a client customer, now you're more emotionally connected there.
Yeah.
So if this is the right thing to do, you and me, we know it. This is the right approach to business, and long term, it's going to play out that way too. But if you want data on all this, look up just like empathy and whatever you're doing, whatever business you're in, an empathetic approach to whatever your problem. You're going to see data after data showing that an empathetic approach to what you're doing is also, turns out, the more profitable thing to be doing too. So the loving thing turns out to be also the more profitable way to approach it. And I think, a lot of businesses, they don't understand it now, but like you said, the ones that do, you've got this nice window, I think, that unfortunately is going to be here for a while, of where kindness and love will differentiate you and keep your customers long-term. And when stuff like we've talked about in the show, when that recession hits or when that pandemic hits, these are the ones that stay with you through the tough times too. These are the ones who weather those storms with you, is when you build that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, so how, I'm completely on the same page as you. And I'm going to take a look at your, services as well, because I'm just really curious about it. It feels like that's really, where we need to keep doubling down. Right. How can people find you, Stephen? How do they reach out to you? Where do they find you on the web? I'll put everything in the show notes as well, but give me an idea where all that is.
Yeah. If you want to check out our AI platform, go to aicmo.io. If you want to check out our agency, you can go to zerocompany.com, ZERO company, all spelled out. Get a hold of us there. I don't know if you want to promote another podcast or not, but we get to, we have what we call the BLISS Business Podcast, where you can hear me ask businesses, owners, CEOs and stuff, what role love plays in their business, twice a week. So we get into some really good conversations there too. It's fun coming on shows like this too, and being able to tell people, hey, if you could do one thing to your business, think about how you can bliss it. How can you build love into some sort of scalable system? The difference between that and a random act of kindness is huge, because if you're not there and you've got a system that's loving and you've helped establish that, you've suddenly kind of left a legacy or left your mark. And now you've got this ripple effect that's going on, even without how, wonderful person that you are that lights up the room with the random acts of kindness. But now that you've systemized it and others can take that forward, this is how we put good into the world on scale.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. This was a really, really interesting conversation, really enjoyable conversation. Honestly, we could have gone for a couple more hours. And
I know. I'm like, this is fun.
Yeah, it's like there's a whole technology thing I want to ask you about, but this was a lot more interesting, I think. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today.
Yep. Thank you. It was great.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in this week. And again, if you're a CFO, especially, or on a finance team, and you guys are still dealing with cash flow and spreadsheets, and of course, cash flow is the absolute lifeblood of your business, come and talk with us, because we're going to make it a lot easier to understand where your business is headed a lot faster, and make sure that your management team is right up to date on where you need to go. Just visit us at dryrun.com.